to Joy English School. I am Chris Gorski.
I'm Antony.
Today is February 16th. We're on pages 32 and 33, and it's time for the biography article. Today, our story is called Ed Jackson, doing everything he can to survive.
没错，今天呢，到了我们人物传记的单元了 ，biography。我们今天要介绍的人物呢是 Ed Jackson。好，他这个地方的话，中文是艾德·杰克逊，竭尽所能的生存之路。那英文的话是 doing everything he can to survive。survive 这个字就是想办法在困难的环境中存活下来。我们来看一下今天的内容吧。
That's right. Now let's look at our subtitle just before we hear it. How one man went from millimeters to mountains.
当初我在看这个副标题的时候，其实不是很懂什么叫做 from millimeters to mountains. Millimeters 这个一看应该很清楚，前面的 M-I-L-L 它有一千的意思，所以这里的话指的是那种公厘，或者是可以称作为毫米，对不对？它从毫米到 mountains, what does that mean? 我们看到中文标题说，从只能移动几毫米到可以登上山脉的男人。所以到底他身上发生什么事情呢？我们赶快来看看。
Yes. Okay, friends, welcome back to the program. We're looking at pages 32 and 33. And here's a little secret. Antony and I, we always try to say the names correctly in our stories. We always try to find a YouTube video. Maybe the person wants to say their own name, so we know the pronunciation is correct. But today we just have an English name, Ed Jackson, and it feels so good.
没错
It was so easy.
真好。
Yeah, so we're very lucky this month. We have a very easy to say name. So let's talk about Mr. Ed Jackson. In April 2022, Ed Jackson, a former English rugby player, and his team were trying to climb 7,126-meter Himlung Himal in the Himalayas.
好，我们来看第一句话哦。第一句话就告诉你说，在2022年4月就是去年4月的时候呢 ，Ed Jackson， 他本身是a former English rugby player。这个 rugby player 就是橄榄球选手。可是你要想象哦，这个橄榄球选手他们是不带那种太多的护具的，跟我们的 American football 是不太一样的。好，他说 ，and his team。We're trying to climb 7,126 meter Himlum Himal. 好，这个地方的话是一个这个喜马拉雅山的一个西姆龙峰，高达7126公尺的 in the Himalayas.
So we have meter without an S because it's an adjective to the name of the mountain.
没错，这句话要特别注意一下，即便是7126 meter， 因为它这个整个部分是形容词，所以 meter 后面不要加 s， 这样它整句才可以变成形容词的感觉。
Let's continue. Because of COVID-19, nobody had climbed the mountain in 2.5 years.
好，我们来看下一句话，它就说了Because of COVID-19, 好，因为这个疫情的关系，新冠病毒的疫情，然后他说 Nobody had climbed the mountain in 2.5 years， 意思就是指说，在这个时间呢，2年半的期间，没有人爬上这座山了哦。所以在这里的话，其实2年半的时间里头，大家都没有去爬喜马拉雅山。
So we have had 加过去分词 our past participle. So this is the past perfect tense. 过去分词 We don't always get to see this grammar. I like to try to remind students to pay attention to it when they see it. Usually it means 这个是 Anthony taught me this 过去式的过去. It's really clear, and usually there's something important about that relationship. It's not just a regular past time.
没错，在这边的话特别注意一下，我们现在讲到他是要去爬这个山已经是过去的事情了嘛，那在这个时间点之前好像有很多人很多时间的很多的2年半前都没有人去爬了，所以在讲一个时间点之前发生的状况持续的状态，我们会用过去完成式哦。
Our next sentence says, therefore, he and his team had to set up new camps and ropes along the way.
好，最后他又告诉你为什么他要特别提到2年半没有人爬这个山。所以说，因为在这种状况之下 he and his team had to set up new camps and ropes along the way. 所以他这个过程中，他跟他的团队必须要设置新的营地，还有设置这些绳索，因为这个过去的2年半都没有在用，他没有办法用现成的东西，这样的话会变得是他的任务变得更加的困难。
When we say along the way, we really mean while we do something. So for me, I underlined along the way and I wrote while they climbed.
没错，在这里的话 along the way 其实本来的意思的话就是指一路上一路以来，在这边的话当他们在往上爬的过程中就要一路的设置新的营地，好准备好钉好新的绳索，很辛苦。
So before we move on to paragraph 2, we should probably talk about Ed Jackson and this mountain really quickly. So first of all, Ed Jackson is a big guy. He's 193 centimeters tall and he weighs 110 kilograms. When he starts running, there's pictures of him running. He looks like he is a mountain himself.
Wow.
And it looks scary to stand in front of him. He will run you over. He's a train. He's a truck. Pow! He's going to hit you hard.
OK, 所以呢，老师刚刚先告诉我们说，我们的主角艾德杰克逊呢，他本身是193公分高，然后110公斤。当他在跑步橄榄球选手的时候，其实说实在话，你不敢去挡他，因为很像是被卡车碾过的感觉。
Absolutely. Now, the mountain he climbed, it's really far away. It's in the Himalayas. Now, Shemufeng Mount Everest, of course, is the most famous, but this is not a small mountain either. When you drive to this mountain, you have to get out because there's no more road, and you have to walk for days just to get to the mountain.
哇，所以说在这里的话，因为它这个地方其实道也不太好到达哦，所以在这边你开车开到一定的地方之后，你只要徒步去走，而且光是从下车走路到那个山就要花上好几天的时间。
It's so dangerous, and food can be so rare and so important that they actually found a yak. That's this really big animal, like a buffalo. It was killed by a snow leopard. They ate some of it too to save their own food.
哇，所以你看在这个路上其实食物是很重要的事情，而且也蛮稀少的，所以他们在一路去到这个山里头的时候，在路上看到那种有被这种雪豹给杀死的牦牛，然后他躺在路边嘛，他就把他的牦牛的这个肉啊吃一吃，这样可以省下他们自己所带的食物。
Alright, so this is a pretty far away place. With that, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we have more of our story about Ed Jackson. All right, friends, welcome back to Enjoy English School. We're on the biography article today, and we're on pages 32 and 33. We're talking about Ed Jackson, who we'll see in the future, has some trouble, and he learns to climb mountains afterwards. Let's look at our second paragraph. As or when Jackson and his team reached 6,800 meters, they had no choice but to turn back due to difficult conditions.
好，我们来看第二段。第二段就告诉你说了，Jackson 我们的主角还有他的团队差不多到达到6800公尺高的时候，然后他说 They had no choice but to turn back due to difficult conditions， 意思就是他们不得不转掉头回去，因为状况怎么样，非常的艰困。这边的话特别注意一下 had no choice but to do something， 这个 choice 就是选项选择，你别无选择，只能去做后面这件事情 turn back 回头。 Why? Due to difficult conditions。 Difficult condition 就是这种非常状况很艰困，然后在这个 condition 指的是状况。好，他们怎么样的艰困法呢？我们来看下一句话。
So, choice is important here. Don't say choose, don't use a verb. And had no choice to means 他们必须. But really, this is very strong English. Just like Anthony made very clear, when we say have no choice but to, we really mean this is a really difficult decision for them. Let's continue. They quickly found themselves stuck on the side of a mountain.
哇，天哪，你看他才不告诉你说 They quickly found themselves stuck on the side of a mountain， 所以这边的话先讲的 difficult conditions 马上就告诉你他们很快的发现到说自己呢被困在山的一侧，他们困住了。
When we find ourselves, that means we discover we have this situation we didn't prepare for. It feels very sudden and usually quite unhappy.
没错。
One of their guides had fallen into a deep crack, and they weren't going to leave without him.
哇，这个地方更严重的是 one of their guides 其中他们一个导游呢 had fallen into a deep crack 就是很大很大的那种裂缝，其中他们的一个导游呢居然掉进了这个很深的裂缝里头，但是怎么样，他说 and they weren't going to leave without him， 今天不会把他丢在那边等死，然后他们离开，不会，他们想尽办法要把他救出来。
So we have the past perfect tense again. That's the second time we have the past perfect in this sentence. Had fallen. You should underline that. Remember, every time you see past perfect, there's usually a good reason for it. We should pay attention. The temperature was minus 30 degrees Celsius, and they had no food, water, or tents.
哇，你看看这个状况有多艰困。你看他第一个是困在山的一侧，有人摔到这个 crack 很大的裂缝里头，对不对？最后呢 the temperature 那个温度啊 was minus 30 degrees Celsius 就是零下30度，哦天哪 and they had no food, water or tents 当时他们没有食物或水或是帐篷，好可怕，我们很难想象这种状况。
It's super crazy and it sounds so scary. Also, pay attention. They had, that's affirmative. That's 肯定的. Then we have no. That's your negative here. Don't say like hadn't.No, that's incorrect. Our next sentence says, a rescue helicopter couldn't aid them until the following morning. When they finally could call for help, it was already almost dark.
Yeah, 所以在这边的话呢，他们真的要去救他的这个直升机呢，一直要到什么时候才能去帮助他们 ？Couldn't aid them until the following morning， 一直到第二天，所以他们要度过漫漫长夜，在零下30度，然后大家又没有食物，又没有帐篷可以取暖的情况，饥寒交迫，这才叫真的饥寒交迫。
So we see this word aid, that means to save or to help. If you know first aid, you already kind of know this.
没错 first aid 就是急救，所以 first aid kit 就是那种急救箱，对不对？在这边的话 aid 这个字就是帮助的意思，如果你常看到 first aid 或者急救箱这样的概念的话， aid 这边当帮助一点都不困难。
Throughout the night, they tried their hardest to survive.
你看，果然第二天直升机才会来救，所以漫漫长夜 throughout the night, they tried their hardest to survive 尽其可能想尽办法的要存活下来。
So Ed Jackson later said on the mountain that night, he and his team would take turns keeping each other awake because if they fell asleep, they were very certain they would not wake up again.
没有错，所以在这边的话，老师还特别去讲说，当初 Ed Jackson 在回忆那段过去的时候，那一天晚上，大家彼此就要互相提醒说，你千万别睡着，醒醒啊，兄弟！大家互相提醒，保持清醒，因为一旦睡下去了，很可能就不会再醒来。
That's right. It's a really crazy thing to think about. And I think Anthony is so polite. Hey, Chris, 请问不要睡觉. Like, I feel like they probably were like shaking each other and rubbing each other. There's a lot of energy. And I mean like hit each other too because they need also to keep themselves excited because it's so dangerous to go to sleep here.
Right. Stay with me, brother. Stay with me, brother.
Look at me.
Look at me.
Yeah, like in the movies.
没错。
All right. Let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, we have our third and final paragraph for today. Okay, friends, welcome back to Enjoy English School. We're on pages 32 and 33. We just learned that Ed Jackson and his team are stuck on the mountain, and if they go to sleep, they might not wake up. It's minus 30 degrees Celsius. It's really dangerous.
没错，我们刚刚又提到那个状况有多艰困，对不对？零下30度，有人掉进这个裂缝里头，而且他们被困在山的一侧，状况真的非常非常危急。
Our next sentence begins, although Jackson did not reach the top or the peak, P-E-A-K, it was a major victory.
好，到了第三段，他告诉我们说 Although Jackson did not reach the top， 虽然说呢 Jackson 他没有登顶，没有攻顶成功哦， It was a major victory， 但他还是一个非常大的胜利。
So we've said this before again this month. I really like that we can say these things a few times. If you listen to the whole magazine, you'll hear us kind of repeat some of these rules. I think that's really useful. So, 忘记什么时候, but we already said this month. Although 就是虽然但是 in English, you could say although 还是你可以说 but 但是你不可以说 although but 在一起，所以在这个逗号You should write but and cross it out, 擦掉。
没错，你可以在这个第二句 It was a major victory 上面写一个 but， 然后再用红笔打一个大叉叉，因为前面有 although 跟 but 我们不连用，好，不像中文会讲虽然但是，我们英文只能选一个哦。
In fact, it was a new world record. This was him reaching the not the peak of this mountain, still was a world record.Yeah,
所以在这边他告诉你说，事实上呢，他这件事情，他攻顶这件事情还没有攻成功哦，就是爬山这件事情本身已经创下了新的世界纪录了。
So what was a new world record? Let's find out in this next sentence. This was the highest that anyone in the world had ever climbed, 过去完全是 after suffering a serious injury to the spinal cord.
好，我们来看一下这个世界纪录是什么。原来他就说啊，这是全世界脊椎受过严重伤害的人里面，曾经登上的最高纪录。他那时候到6800公尺嘛，对不对？所以到后来我们发现到说，到了第三段我们才晓得这件事说 Ed Jackson 原来之前脊椎受过伤啊。在这句话里面他有看到一个什么 injury to the spinal cord， 这个地方你帮我把 the spinal cord 画起来，就是脊椎。然后这边他提到的是说 the highest that anyone in the world had ever climbed after suffering a serious injury to the spinal cord， 所以你就知道说他是脊椎受伤之后还能够爬山去到达最高的这个地方是6800公尺，他创造了世界纪录。
So now in our last sentence of day one, we'll actually learn something really important for Ed Jackson that gives us the title of the story. The sentence begins, Ed Jackson was a quadriplegic, a person with limited use of both his legs and arms.
好，最后一句还告诉你说 Ed Jackson was a quadriplegic， 就是指四肢瘫痪者A person with limited use of both his legs and arms. 这边特别注意一下，也许你看到 quadriplegic， 你会想说这个字是什么意思啊？不要怕，你只要看到逗号后面有另外一串叙述，它就是在告诉你说这个字的意思是什么。原来是 a person with limited use of both his legs and arms， 就是手跟脚，双手双脚使用上有一定的限度的这样的四肢瘫痪者。
So if your Latin is any good, and if you kind of studied a bunch of English, you know a lot of Latin already. Quad, Q-U-A-D, means four. If you go to a university or college, dashi, in America or Canada, you might share a room with 3 other people, and that room is called your quad. Now, plegic, 那个后面, that's actually Greek, and it means to hit. So you're hit in 4 places.
所以在这里的话，你是被4个地方被攻击到了，意思就是这4肢都不太能用。所以在这个地方的话，你可以很清楚的知道这个 quadriplegic 这个字在拆的时候，我们可以怎么拆。
Now, I'll also tell you another secret. In the future, this word might not be, it might be forgotten because there's a lot of people that hate a Latin and a Greek root put together. We have quad, that's Latin for 4, plegic, that's Greek for hit, and they don't like those two together. So now they have this new word for that it's all Greek, but I don't know how popular it is yet. But I do know that doctors sometimes like to use this now. Also because quadriplegic sometimes feels a little negative, I guess, for some people. So they also maybe in the future that word won't be so useful.
所以这个字的话，其实如果真的忘记没有关系哦，因为事实上它是把拉丁文跟希腊文的字根放在一起，所以说在这个字的话，你只要听到，也许慢慢到后面，大家也许不会这么常用这个字。
Maybe, yeah. This is something we'll see because English is a language that will change with time. So let's take a break here. And when we come back, we have our vocab for our day one story. All right, friends, it is time for our vocab review for Ed Jackson. Our first word today is former.
Former 就是之前的，我们提到former English rugby player， 对吧？这个 former 就是之前的形容词。
这个 for 就是 before 的 for. Number 2, to set up.
To set up 意思就是指去设置、设定。好，在这边的话指的是设置新的营地啊和绳索。Set up 这个用法是一个片语。
Number 3, have no choice but to do something.
Yeah, have no choice but to do something 就是别无选择，只好去做某件事情。
Number 4 is an adjective, stuck.
Stuck 就是被卡住了，被困在什么地方了。
Number 5, a crack.
A crack 就是很大的那种裂缝。
Sometimes you could call this a crevice, C-R-E-V-I-C-E. This is a little bit fancier, but crack is good here. Number 6, minus.
Minus 是负的，或是如果今天讲到气温的话，是指零下的。
Number 7 is to suffer.
To suffer 就是受苦，或是受到什么样子的创伤、这种冲击等等。
Number 8, an injury.
An injury 就是受伤了，受了某个伤。
Now, that's it for today, but tomorrow we're going to learn more about Ed Jackson and how he became a quadriplegic and what did he do after he became a quadriplegic who couldn't move. 怎么可以爬山？
没错，所以他们这边提到这个 from millimeters to mountains， 到了第3段才知道，我明天会去告诉你他当时发生这种意外的时候的这个场景。
All right, well, with that, for Enjoy English School, I am Chris Korsky.
I'm Antony.
And we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.